What's up, guys? So I just finished up on these two cylinder heads, two for the same guy, number one, number two. Just finished lapping in the valves and everything like that. They're all set from here. Valve jobs are done and they are ready to go out to get milled. If you look at the ports on them, they're really unique. You know, in this one you can really kind of see down it. And they're very unique. Actually flowed on the flow bench and velocity matched. What these are a stock appearing pair of cylinder heads, and the stock appearing class, I think, has some of the biggest challenges to overcome. That is mainly what I do, is go-kart stock appearing classes, some open modified, stuff like that. I haven't really been getting the clientele for some of the outrageous stuff. I do believe that some of that stuff has just arrived. I have to do the open box on it though. Some really cool stuff coming up. So I mean, most of the stuff I do is with the cast heads, stock appearing stuff. You know, mostly kart classes where you know, they have rolls and stuff for cylinder head types. So the biggest thing on these is, you know, when you're dealing with the stock appearing carburetor, you know, being able to optimize this system, just like anything, no matter what the carburetor size, no matter what the cylinder head, being able to optimize that is the goal. So the first thing, the way I start these off is, the first thing I do is get my combustion chamber shape. I weld it up, rough it in. After it's roughed in, I put it on the bench and I flow it with the smoke. Now when I flow it with the smoke, I don't have the valve in at this point. And I just watch the way it comes out of the valve seat, an uncut valve seat, mind you. And that's with a stock port. So I watch the way that the smoke comes into the cylinder head, and from that's how I design my chambers. Now, different size cylinder, different size engines have different size shaped cylinders, and etc. etc. Now, another thing that also depicts the shape of the chamber is your compression ratio, which also has to do with the lift you can run, etc. On these cylinder heads in this type of kart, there aren't any lift rules. Basically, the only rule in this type of karting is stock appearing with stock appearing carburetor. So situations like that, it's very easy for people to make mistakes and do things wrong. So the biggest thing on these is, you know, optimizing the port for that size carburetor and cylinder fill. So, and getting the compression ratio right with the amount of lift you can run. So we can run a really high lift, so we need to, you know, keep our piston to valve clearance, because we're running, you know, about 500 lifts. So in that situation, you need to think about how much you're going to mill off, and think about your finished CC in the chamber to know what your compression ratio is going to be, and make sure you know what fuel you're running. These are actually going to be on gas. It's non-methanol allowed in this class. That's another rule. So what I've done is just optimize the ports. I have a flow number that I have. I've flowed a bunch of stock carburetors. So I know what the carburetors could flow, and I know what the port needs to be at. And once you get your CFM number, that's part of the picture. Now that CFM number, you know, if you know, if you're flowing through a certain size carburetor, you know, it doesn't matter, you know, how big you make the port at this point. You know, you could make the cylinder head flow 150 CFM, but if it can't go through that size carburetor, it doesn't matter how big the port is. So in this type of situation, What mostly I do is, you know, some of the more complicated builds where, you know, everything has to be optimized for this scenario. It's basically a type of class. Stock repairing to me is one of the most exciting classes to build for because it has the most challenges per se. So in this one here, you could see the way we optimize, well, the way I optimize this port here. You could see down into this one, they're both exactly the same. You know, it's basically done through probing, because if you have a certain CFM that you know the carburetor can flow, so you want to match that amount of CFM through the cylinder head. So if you have the amount of CFM you're flowing and the port flows more, what you need to do is make sure your velocity is high. Now, if I was to just remove material to make the cylinder head flow more, even though the carburetor can't support that, what I would be doing is taking away from velocity. And velocity is actually, it's a number derived from CFM. So CFM and velocity, you know, you can't have velocity without CFM. You know, CFM is the measurement of air moving, and velocity is the speed of which the air is moving. So they're kind of like partners, like torque and horsepower. So it's very important to make sure that your velocity and CFM are matched. And that's the way you can make the most amount of power. These two cylinder heads right here, going on about 80 hours on these two cylinder heads. They still need to go out and get milled. Then they need to come back, get a final cleanup and a final assembly. I've already lapped the valves and got all that said and done. I've already done the 5-angle valve job, got that all said and done. But what is left is just basically the head milling. I need to do a final CC now. I just took them off the flow bench. I know what they flow for CFM and velocity. They're exactly where I want them to be. I basically sculpted them on the bench to get my final port shapes. The exhaust is really nice. Really clean, it's polished. It flows well. So everything has basically been matched to the intake. This is the insulator that's used off the exhaust, that's used off the carburetor on a stock repairing class. And this has all been molded to that and fitted up to that perfectly. And once we got that size going in, you know, we did a lot of work with the velocity probe and got our numbers to where we wanted them to be. So now it just basically has to go out and get milled, come back, final fit and finish, final cleanup on everything, double check everything, do some assembly lube on the valves, put them in. I got some custom valve seals that I have that he's going to run. So put the custom valve seals on and assemble the cylinder heads and ship them out. You know, in this situation, this has been an A to Z build. Everything on these cylinder heads, I've selected the cam. We went through and built the engine to the size. And everything has been hands-on on this build. So this guy here, he's going to be one to absolute contend with this year. These two cylinder heads are basically, you know, as good as it gets. A lot of the stuff I've been putting out lately has been, you know, really high-end stuff. Most of these guys I sponsor. A lot of these prices and the hours that it takes to do these can't really be done without some type of partnership. So, you know, getting my name out there, get the name on some karts this year in the leagues. So if you guys see anybody out there with a Paul's Karts performance cylinder head on it, sticker on it, or graphics on it, watch out for those guys. But just wanted to show you guys what I've been working on. It's been about 70 hours, 80 hours on these, not quite done yet. Probably about another, I don't know, couple hours at the machine shop, and then maybe hour and a half, 2 hours cleaning them and putting them together. I don't know, so probably about 80-85 hours all said and done. But yeah, give you another look at the ports. I know that's what you guys are all probably interested in. I left that that nice texture in there. I just had wiped it down with some acetone, so it kind of made it a little darker. But you know, they really, these things really perform. I'm really proud of this. I've been doing a lot of epoxy ports lately. That's kind of my forte. Is just the you know, stock appearing classes, anything with the stock cylinder heads, because these are the real sleepers in my mind. It's easy to put a billet cylinder head on there and you know, make some numbers, but even those billet cylinder heads, they need work too. I just saw a recent video out there of a guy doing some work on those, coming out nice. So you know, one thing I can say is make sure your velocity matching all your stuff. If you're not, it will show gains. You know, and until next time, this is Paul from Paul's Karts, and you guys have a good day.